Good morning, you're watching A News. I'm Dilek Tuna. Here are the top stories for the hour. India launches strikes on Pakistan in Operation Sindoor while Islamabad vows retaliation. The conclave to elect a new pope continues today in the Vatican, with voting set to proceed until a candidate secures a two-thirds majority. Israeli media reports direct talks between Turkey and Israel are scheduled to take place in Baku today. Indian drone and airstrikes have reportedly hit multiple locations across Pakistan and Pakistani-administered Kashmir. Islamabad says 6 Pakistani sites were targeted, though none were said to be militant camps. The strikes have caused civilian casualties and significant damage to infrastructure.
According to Pakistan's military spokesperson, Indian missile strikes and artillery fire have killed at least 31 people. 26 in the missile strikes and 5 more along the line of control from artillery fire. Scenes of devastation unfolded in the eastern Pakistani city of Muridka overnight, following reported Indian drone strikes. Residents of Muzaffarabad, the capital of Pakistan-administered Kashmir, described the impact of a strike that destroyed a mosque shortly after midnight, sending panic through the hillside residential neighborhood. Fire started to spread. We came out for a while. Then there was another explosion and the whole house shook. Then we all got scared. Then we evacuated the house, taking the children with us. Pakistan has condemned the strikes, describing them as a violation of its sovereignty. Officials claimed that Indian missiles hit multiple locations and asserted that 5 Indian aircraft were shot down, though this has not been independently verified.
So we are giving our armed forces, the ground forces, the air force are giving all the necessary responses to defend the territorial integrity and sovereignty of the Pakistan. And so far, I can confirm you that 5 Indian aircrafts, including 3 Rafale, 1 Su-30 and 1 MiG-29 have been shot down, and 1 Heron drone has also been shot down. The information that I have so far with me now, this is near Bhatinda in India, in Akhnur, and there are other locations also. As the information keeps on coming, I'll keep on updating.
Meanwhile, Indian Foreign Secretary Vikram Misri, speaking at a news briefing in New Delhi, said India took what it described as preemptive action following an attack on 22nd April. Indian police and medics reported that at least 7 civilians were killed and 30 others wounded in retaliatory Pakistani firing and shelling at multiple points along the line of control, the de facto border that divides the disputed Kashmir region between the two countries. The confrontation has also affected civilian air traffic, with flights to and from India rerouted to avoid Pakistani airspace, as shown by real-time tracking data. Several airports in both countries were temporarily closed as a precaution. This escalation is one of the most serious since the 2003 ceasefire agreement, which was reaffirmed in 2021. While limited skirmishes have occurred over the years, targeted strikes deep into Pakistani territory, especially outside the contested Kashmir region, remain rare.
As fears of a wider conflict grow, global leaders are urging both nuclear-armed nations to show restraint and return to dialogue.
The operation, named Sindoor by India, sparked a sharp reaction from Islamabad and said it is now responding to what it called unprovoked aggression. The international response was swift, with world leaders expressing growing alarm over the escalating tensions. US President Donald Trump called the situation a shame, noting that the long-standing rivalry between India and Pakistan has once again reached a dangerous point.
Well, my position is I get along with both. I know both very well, and I want to see them work it out. I want to see them stop. And hopefully they can stop now. They've gone tit for tat, so hopefully they can stop now. But I know both. We get along with both countries very well. Good relationships with both, and I want to see it stop. And if I can do anything to help, I will be there.
Echoing the president's remarks, US Secretary of State Marco Rubio said he is monitoring the situation closely and reaffirmed Washington's commitment to engaging both sides in search of a peaceful resolution. The United Nations also voiced deep concern. The spokesperson for Secretary General Antonio Guterres, Stefan Dujarric, described the Indian military operations as deeply troubling. He urged both countries to exercise maximum military restraint, warning that the world cannot afford a military confrontation between India and Pakistan. Japan's Chief Cabinet Secretary Yoshimasa Hayashi strongly condemned the initial terrorist attack in Kashmir and expressed concern that this situation may lead to further retaliatory exchanges and escalate into a full-scale military conflict. He urged both countries to stabilize the situation through dialogue. The United Arab Emirates also called for de-escalation. Foreign Minister Sheikh Abdullah bin Zayed said, "We must avoid further escalation that could threaten regional and international peace," emphasizing the need for diplomacy as the only path forward.
3 Pakistani major airports, Lahore, Karachi and Sialkot, have been temporarily closed for commercial flights due to prevailing regional tensions. Flight operations at these airports will remain suspended, according to Pakistan's Civil Aviation Authority. The closure of airspace in these 3 cities, which began early Thursday morning, is expected to remain in effect till Thursday noon for operational reasons. Previously, we discussed the complexity of the India-Pakistan conflict and the connectivity and water pact treaty issues with Kaisar Nawab, chairman of the Belt and Road Initiative for Sustainable Development from Islamabad. Kaisar explained why the water situation in Pakistan is critical and shared his perspective on the latest developments regarding the emerging situation.
So the recent escalations between India and Pakistan is deeply concerning, especially as it involves direct 24 strikes on civilian areas within Pakistan at 6 different locations. What makes this situation particularly alarming is the violation of international norms and deliberate targeting of non-military zones, tragically resulting in the loss of 26 innocent lives, including women, children, and elderly people, and many are injured, and the destruction of a mosque, which is against the violation. So the current water situation after the Indians' unilateral suspension of the Indus Water Treaty that was negotiated by the World Bank in 1960, this has created a severe problem for Pakistan, particularly the province Punjab, which is the Pakistan's food baskets, and you know that the crop season is coming soon, and it's already a crop season, and wheat and all these cotton cycle is in the process, and there is a severe need of water that will ultimately result of food security in the region. And previously, that in a very public rally, the former prime minister very diligently and bravely mentioned that either the blood will flow or the water will flow in the Indus River. And I think this criminalization of the nature of the river is something that is beyond the understanding of today's modern world and, of course, the humanity. And this water treaty that has already been very much valid even during the previous wars, and currently in this age where we are already facing the climate change and, of course, climate issues, and by this violation, the India's way of terrorism is something very new in the modern world. And Pakistan definitely will respond to that. But what happened yesterday night was something that one should also emphasize under Article 51 of the United Nations Charter, that we fully reserve the inherent right to self-defense in response to the acts of aggression. And Pakistan Armed Forces responded to this unprovoked assault with professionalism and precision, which targeted only military assets to ensure the minimal civilian impact in India. The destruction of these multiple Indian aircraft you must heard in the news, including Rafale, this is a French technology air jets, and this So Koi jets was not only an act of retaliation, but also a measured and lawful act of deterrence meant to preserve peace and protect national sovereignty. And the same will also be answered in the way of the water treaty as well.
South Korea's military says North Korea fired multiple short-range missiles off its east coast earlier today. The launches came from the city of Wonsan and are now under close scrutiny. Seoul is working with the United States and Japan to analyse the details. North Korea's missile activities violate UN Security Council resolutions, but Pyongyang says has continued developing its weapons program despite international sanctions and warnings. The conclave to choose Pope Francis' successor was unable to reach a decision as black smoke was seen emerging from the Sistine Chapel's chimney on Wednesday evening. Additional rounds of voting will take place today and will continue in the days ahead until a decision is reached. The cardinals inside the chapel remain completely cut off from the outside world until a new pope is elected. Polish Prime Minister Donald Tusk welcomed German Chancellor Friedrich Merz to Warsaw on Wednesday, hailing what he called a new opening in bilateral relations between Poland and Germany.
Polish Prime Minister Donald Tusk and German Chancellor Friedrich Merz highlighted the need to enhance cooperation on European security, migration and defence during Merz's first official visit to Poland as Chancellor. Tusk stressed the need to maintain the Schengen free travel zone while reinforcing the European Union's external borders, especially those shared with Belarus and Russia. He added that the migration issue remains a politically sensitive and emotionally charged topic across the continent.
I know that I will find a newer partner who understands well that protecting the border with Belarus and Russia, and therefore Poland's border with these countries, is a common task and a common responsibility for the whole of Europe, and therefore also for Germany. I am very pleased that we are looking for solutions together, for symmetrical European solutions. Our concern is, and should be, to maintain Schengen, and I understand the need for reinforced control, but this reinforced control should be dedicated primarily to the external borders of the European Union.
Merz echoed Tusk's call for stronger border protection.
We will work together to improve European rules, and I also know from the German perspective about the responsibility of protecting Europe's external borders, which we as Germans do not have. But of course, these are also our common European external borders, and we do not leave the protection of these external European borders solely to countries such as Poland, which have these external European borders. We see it as our duty to better protect these external European borders with German support and assistance than we have managed to do in the past. And in this respect, I think we will find good solutions here. The goal is a common goal, namely to drastically reduce irregular migration. And we are working on this together, and all together, in a good European spirit.
Both leaders said that Poland and Germany are united in their support on Ukraine.
We have talked and will continue to talk, of course, after this press conference, about issues that are not easy. This is, of course, Ukraine. We have identical views. We will support Ukraine in its struggle for independence and territorial integrity, as we have done so far. And I know that I will have a determined and resolute partner here in you.
Merz pledged Germany's support for Poland in securing the EU's eastern border and said he was confident this visit marked the start of stronger, more cooperative ties between the two countries.
China is pushing back against steep new US tariffs with a fresh set of economic measures aimed at stabilising growth and avoiding a major spending surge. As trade talks loom, Beijing is treading carefully. Manur Mahdoum has the latest.
China has rolled out a major policy package in an effort to cushion its economy against the harsh US tariffs of up to 145%. The new policy will focus on boosting domestic demand, supporting key sectors, and maintaining stability without a major increase in government spending. Some key efforts include lowering interest rates, China's central bank has already cut the lending rate and reserve requirement ratio, injecting around $138 billion into the economy. Housing loan rates were also reduced in an effort to revive the property sector, and promises were made to further support the elderly care facilities and factory upgrade. Despite threatening to increase spending, Beijing is sticking to its 4% budget deficit target after a 3.5% drop in tax revenue. Meanwhile, China is preparing for trade talks with the US in Geneva later this week, with both sides aiming to ease trade tensions between the two countries. Markets reacted cautiously. The stock did rise slightly, but uncertainty remains. So far, there's no indication that China will roll out any new measures to mitigate the impact of the trade tensions with the United States. Manu Makoon, A News, Beijing, China.
The chairman of the People's Council of Turkmenistan, Gurbanguly Berdimuhamedov, paid an official visit to France. The purpose of the trip was to strengthen cooperation between the two countries in politics, economics and culture. Our correspondent Fariza Karamurzina has more on the details.
A key moment of the visit was the meeting between the chairman of the People's Council of Turkmenistan, Gurbanguly Berdimuhamedov, and French President Emmanuel Macron. The negotiations took place at the Élysée Palace and culminated in the signing of several partnership development agreements. The main areas of focus are digital technologies, space exploration, the agricultural sector, water resources, and the gas industry. One of the most significant outcomes was an agreement with Thales Alenia Space for the supply of a second telecommunications satellite to Turkmenistan. Discussions also resolved around energy cooperation. However, this topic was not directly reflected in the final documents. However, its importance cannot be overstated. Turkmenistan possesses one of the largest natural gas reserves in the world, making it particularly attractive to Europe, which is actively seeking alternatives to Russian energy supplies. Against this backdrop, the European Union's investment plan for Central Asia is especially relevant, 12 billion euros under the Global Gateway Initiative. These investments align with Ashgabat's policy of expanding exports to the West and reducing its dependence on China. However, the logistics of Turkmen gas supplies to Europe remain a challenging issue due to the country's geographical location bordered by Iran and Afghanistan. The visit itself was a significant event as Turkmenistan almost never engaged in direct contact with Western leaders. Berdimuhamedov's last visit to France was in 2010 during the presidency of Nicolas Sarkozy, and in 2016 he met with Angela Merkel in Berlin. Turkmenistan's neutral status continues to form the foundation of its foreign policy, and this visit reinforces that position. Fariza Karamurzina, A News, in Almaty, Kazakhstan.
According to Israel's Channel 11, direct talks between Turkey and Israel are scheduled to take place in Baku on the 8th of May. The discussions are expected to focus on regional security issues, particularly in the context of the situation in Syria, where the interests of both countries often intersect. Reports indicate that Israel will push for the demilitarization of areas near the Syrian border and the exclusion of any strategic weapons deployments that could threaten its security. Azerbaijan and Iraq have held high-level talks in Baghdad. Iraq is now looking to import Azerbaijani gas, while both sides discussed closer political and economic cooperation.
Azerbaijan and Iraq are looking to expand cooperation across a range of sectors, from energy and politics to humanitarian efforts. Foreign Minister Ceyhun Bayramov met with his Iraqi counterpart Fuad Hussein in Baghdad, where Iraq expressed interest in buying natural gas from Azerbaijan to meet growing electricity demands. Hussein said Iraq wants to diversify its energy sources and start talks on gas imports. He also invited Azerbaijani companies to invest in Iraq's energy sector. Bayramos and Hussein also discussed regional security, including stability in Syria, the situation in Gaza, and rising tensions between India and Pakistan. Later, Bayramos met with the Speaker of Iraq's parliament, Mahmoud al-Mashhadani. The talks focused on boosting interparliamentary ties and long-term political dialogue. Both sides stressed the importance of building stable, respectful relations, rooted in historic friendship and shared regional interests.
The President of Azerbaijan, Ilham Aliyev, will not attend Moscow's 9th May Victory Day parade, as confirmed by Russian presidential aide Yuri Ushakov. Several factors are believed to have influenced this decision. Relations have been strained due to Russia's lack of cooperation in the investigation of the downing of the Azerbaijani plane in December of 2024, which led to the death of 38 people. A cyber attack on Azerbaijani media, allegedly originating from Russia, has further complicated ties. Additionally, a recent diplomatic incident where an Azerbaijani MP was denied entry to Russia despite an invitation has added to the tensions. Turkey and the United Kingdom are preparing to take a major step in strengthening their economic partnership. The first round of negotiations to modernise the free trade agreement between the two countries is set to begin in July.
Turkey and the United Kingdom will begin the first round of negotiations to modernise their existing free trade agreement in July, following a high-level meeting in London between Turkey's Trade Minister Ömer Bolat and the UK's Secretary of State for Business and Trade, Jonathan Reynolds. Minister Bolat described the talks as productive and confirmed that Turkey has extended an official invitation to Secretary Reynolds for a future visit. During the visit, 2 new agreements were signed, marking further progress in bilateral trade relations. The existing FTA signed in late 2020 mainly covers industrial goods. However, the newly signed supplementary agreements aim to eliminate technical barriers to trade, particularly in key sectors such as automotive and chemicals. Bolat also announced that the 8th session of the Turkey-UK Joint Economic and Trade Committee will take place in London later this year, further bolstering institutional cooperation between the two nations. Looking ahead, both countries have agreed to hold formal negotiations in Ankara before July, with the goal of expanding the current trade deal to cover services, digital trade, investment, and selected agricultural products. Bolat emphasized that while such negotiations typically require time, the shared objective is to reach a comprehensive agreement. Although Turkey is currently awaiting the UK's formal negotiating mandate, technical-level discussions are already set to begin. The agreement to remove technical barriers is seen as a significant milestone in efforts to modernize the trade pact. It's expected to facilitate trade flows, boost business competitiveness, and deepen economic ties between Turkey and the UK.
Regional engagement with Afghanistan's Taliban-led authorities appears to be deepening as more regional countries pursue economic and diplomatic ties with the de facto government. Our correspondent Tamim Bahis in Kabul reports on a series of high-level meetings.
The UAE Special Representative for Afghanistan, Saif Muhammad Al-Khatbi, held multiple meetings with senior Afghan officials in Kabul. In his meeting with the Deputy Prime Minister for Economic Affairs, the Afghan leader stressed the country's rich natural resources and Afghanistan's focus on achieving economic self-sufficiency through foreign investment. The UAE envoy expressed interest in investing in infrastructure, especially railway and road construction, and announced plans to host a business conference in Kabul to attract Emirati investors. Separately, the UAE envoy met with the deputy of the railway department, where both sides discussed expanding Afghanistan's railway network and strengthening cooperation. The Afghan official called it a prime opportunity for foreign investment in connecting Afghanistan regionally and internationally. The UAE envoy also met with the acting Minister of Transport and Civil Aviation to explore expanding bilateral ties in the aviation sector. Meanwhile, other countries are also stepping up engagement. Iran's acting ambassador met with the acting Minister of Mines and Petroleum to discuss economic cooperation and Iranian investment in Afghan mining. And during his meeting with the Minister of Energy and Water, China's ambassador pledged support for renewable energy projects. announcing the imminent inauguration of a solar power project in Bamyan. With growing regional interest, Afghanistan's de facto authorities are pushing to position the country as open for investment despite international challenges. This is Tamim Bahis in Kabul for A News.
And that's the world news for the hour. Keep watching A News for more updates.